Hello everyone, I'm Sue Jankowski. You're watching PHTV4 Police Update, and we're talking with Palos Heights Police Detective Bill Moritz. Detective Moritz, thanks for coming in today.
No problem.
It's really great to have Bill with us here today because he's going to talk to us about scams and what we should be watching out for, what we should do, how to avoid becoming a victim, and what you should do if you're approached by someone who's trying to con you. And Bill, I think we've been all aware on our emails, our text messages, and so forth, that there are a lot of scams out there.
Yes.
But it's identifying them.
Yep.
Sometimes they might scare you a little because you think, oh my goodness, you know, this is something I should respond to.
Right.
And people get taken in. So this is great, we're talking about this. The first thing we're going to talk about, though, today is a Bitcoin scam. And you were recently involved in stopping a Bitcoin scam. In fact, we were talking about Bitcoin just before we started talking today, and just the concept is difficult for most of us to understand.
Correct.
Can you tell us what happened with this scam?
Sure. So our patrol officers were dispatched to a resident's house. The complainant, the victim, said that she felt that she was fell to a scam, and in the scam, she described that she was on her Facebook and her computer was taken over by an unknown subject. So she had no control of the computer, nothing like that, and it said, you have a virus on your computer, click on this link, and then she did, and they took over her computer, and she had no control. It said, call this phone number. So she calls this phone number, and a subject on the other line identified as IT support for her computer. And she kept getting transferred to other people, and eventually they took hold of her bank account.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so, and they were able to spoof her bank account, showing it looked like that it was $8,000 over what it was before. There was a random deposit into her bank account. And the people on the other line told her that she needed to withdraw that money, and in order to get everything back to normal, she needed to resend that money back to these IT people. And in order to do that, she had to send it through what's called a Bitcoin ATM. So a lot of these gas stations and liquor stores, they have these kiosks similar to a regular ATM where you put your debit card in, you withdraw money from your bank account. You can put money into these Bitcoin ATMs, and you can send, it'll convert, so the 8,000 gets converted into a Bitcoin, and then you can send it to a destination, almost like wiring a Bitcoin to these people. So she did that, and they gave her computer back. And then finally she was like, this doesn't seem right, and she contacted the police, and that's where we stepped in. So.
Oh, she did all those steps before contacting the police.
Correct, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, but this is one of the rare incidents where we were able to help her out and track the Bitcoin. So, Palos Heights has a working relationship with the FBI, and we also have a police officer that is task forced out with the FBI. So there's a lot of contacts that we have with the FBI, and he presented this case to one of the agents with the FBI, and he was able to help me track the Bitcoin transaction from the ATM to where that money is now. So I was able to track that location of the money, of eventually finding out that it was in a Bitcoin wallet that belonged to Kraken, which is a company in the United States that holds Bitcoins, where you can sell, trade, withdraw, deposit all of your Bitcoins. And it was in this wallet through Kraken. So with that information, I was able to write a search warrant and a seizure warrant for that account, and I eventually was able to seize the account where the money was sent to, and Kraken responded to that search warrant and froze the money in that account, and we were eventually able to have the money sent back over to us from Kraken, and then we returned the money to the victim. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, she was very fortunate.
She was.
That you were, able to do that, and it probably doesn't always end up that way for people.
Unfortunately, it does not. So this was one of the first cases I've been able to work and actually trace Bitcoin transactions. I had no idea that this was a possibility before talking to the FBI. I thought once Bitcoin was sent off to the ether, it was just gone.
Right.
So like I had no idea that we can trace this. So it was a learning experience for me too. And since then, I've worked 4 or 5 other cases. I've helped other, not Palos Heights by themselves. I've taken some more training since this class or this incident happened, and other towns have reached out to me and they've said, hey, I've heard that you've been able to trace Bitcoin and this and that. And so unfortunately, this is the only success story that I have so far. So it is fortunate that I was able to help out our resident, but once these Bitcoins get transferred to somebody's wallet, they have the ability to withdraw that money. Once it's withdrawn, we're not going to be able to find that money. And then also sometimes the Bitcoin gets transferred to an overseas company, and I've seen that where they don't respond to American search warrants. So I sent it out to another case that I worked to QCoin, and unfortunately I wasn't. They didn't even respond to my search warrant, so I wasn't able to track that down.
So it's not always. It doesn't end up as a happy ending. All the time.
Unfortunately, no, but since that this first one happened, I've been able to get more resources with it, and hopefully that with alerting the citizens of Palos Heights and other towns that, if there is a victim of another scam, we can help them out more than we were able to before. But hopefully with programs like this, that we can just prevent it altogether at this point.
So what should this woman have done to avoid all this to start with? She's on her computer,
Right.
And it's not working properly, or it's taken over by something. What would her first step be?
So it's hard to put myself into their shoes because I don't know what they're experiencing when they're talking to the people on the other line. They're very convincing. They tell her, hey, this is the only way that you can do it. Don't contact the police, anything like that. Once you hear that, it should be a red flag at this point that, hey, this might not be real, because it's not the actual bank that you're talking to. They're impersonating themselves to be your bank. And at that point, I would hang up the phone, close your computer, shut it down, and contact the police. And if that happens, we're able to tell them, yeah, no, that's a scam, and then they have steps that they can go out and reboot their computers and get that all wiped off, and then they should be okay. It might cost them a little bit of money, but they're not spending the thousands of dollars that they would have if they were scammed out of that money. So
kind of listen to your internal conscience, where
Correct.
if something seems
Right.
weird.
If your spidey senses are tingling, it's
Yes.
probably too good to be true.
Yeah.
So
So don't keep going forward.
correct.
The police department is your friend there, and they can help you decipher, is this real or not real.
Correct.
So give them a phone call. So I know there's other scams out there. Is there any specific ones you want to mention, or what would be the steps that we should take if we are, suspecting something?
First and foremost, any email or text message or phone call that you don't recognize and they're asking you for money, 9 times out of 10 those are going to be scams, because we've been told, your electric bill is too high, or your tollway money is you owe money to the tollway. They're not going to contact you by phone or text message. They're going to contact you by letter mail or in person. And so in order to do that, don't click on the links that you don't recognize, because they're phishing for you to click on those, and once they do, they take over your computer or your cell phone or anything like that, and eventually get to your bank accounts, and that's where what we're trying to prevent. So if you see an email or a text message that you don't recognize and they're asking for money, I would either shut it down and call the police, or just don't respond at all. So.
Yeah, I mean, like everybody, I've gotten things like the tollway,
Right.
and I think I got something from Amazon a couple times. Your credit card isn't working.
Right.
Oh, okay, then it doesn't work.
Right.
I mean, I just delete it. But at times, it's so real.
Right.
That toll booth one, I thought, well, do I owe money?
Right.
But like you said, you think about it for a minute, and that isn't really what the toll
Correct.
company does.
And there's always whenever you're looking for customer support, so let's say we're trying to contact Best Buy or eBay or Apple. Apple is a big one where your iPhone's not working properly. So you
Yes.
go onto Google and you search Apple support, Apple contact number for support. And unless you're getting that phone number directly from the Apple website, don't call that number, because one of the scams is that if you're searching for Apple support or Comcast support, a lot of times these scammers will spoof numbers into the Google and say, hey, call this 1-800 number. And it's a fake 1-800 number that goes directly to the scammers. And then the scammers will try and convince you, hey, no, you owe this much money in order to get your account unfrozen or a new iPhone or anything like that. Make sure that you're getting phone numbers directly from the Apple website or the website that you're actually looking for, because a lot of times they'll make it look like it's from that website, but it really isn't. It's a phone number that they created in order to scam you out of money.
And even that is tricky, because I personally have looked at what I think is a hotel, but it's not the hotel.
Right.
It looks like the hotel. It's
Right.
got the logo.
Right.
It's got everything. But if you call that number and they pretend to be the hotel,
Right.
it isn't. And so it makes it more and more difficult for people to realize what's the place and what isn't. How do you go about, really finding, I guess you have to do a lot of homework. I mean, I finally realized that wasn't it. I looked on the hotel website again. It was a different phone number. But I think it's really tricky for some people to really get down to the nitty-gritty and find out which is what, or who am I calling?
Right. And, a lot of times the ones that you call, you might not know that you're not calling the right hotel or Apple or eBay or whatever. But if they start asking personal questions, social security numbers, address, phone numbers, all of that stuff without going into a lot of details, it's probably a scam at that point, because they're fishing for you to give them information, and they're trying to do it as quickly and convincingly as possible. So, you call Hampton Inn customer service, you think, and if they start asking for more personal questions than you expected, especially because when we go to a hotel, they always ask for your ID and your credit card. But if they start asking for bank account numbers or dates of births or anything like that over the phone, it's probably going to be a scam on top of it. So at that point, I would just hang up, and then try a different number.
Yeah.
or go in person. That's a big one too. So if you have a problem with your phone or a computer, go somewhere in person. You're not going to get scammed
There you go.
in person. So.
Right. What about, are people, I mean, there's a lot on the phone or computers or whatever, but what about these, people in person coming to your door and saying, I'm the electric company, or, we do your driveway.
Right.
What about those kind of things?
Well, first, in Payless Heights, we have a solicitor's permit. In order to solicit anybody going door to door, you have to go through a rigorous process to make sure that you're not a criminal, and you are who you say you are, and you have permission to be in Payless Heights. So if they're not holding a permit from Payless Heights, they have not gone through the process of becoming a verified solicitor in Payless Heights. So if somebody's claiming to be ComEd or a home improvement center, or a sealer on your driveway repair, and if you ask them, do you have a Payless Heights permit, and if they say no, they might not be scamming, but they just didn't go through the process of being able to solicit in Payless Heights. So that would be the first step I would ask people. And then if you say, hey, I'm not interested, and they're bugging you more and more, I would just close the door and then call the non-emergency number, and we'll respond and make sure that they are who they say they are. So, and if anybody's trying to push into their way into the house or anything like that, clearly they're not who they say are.
Right.
As well. So.
Right. Okay, so that's something people should be aware of. Is there any other advice we can give people? For a while, I'm not sure they're doing this anymore, but I actually got a couple calls that said, Grandma, I need some money.
Right.
Like, you're out of luck.
Right.
You're not going to get it from me. But, that is very realistic to some
is,
people.
yes.
And is that still prevalent, that type of scam?
It's been a while since I took a report of that type of scam. But if anybody, I go back to if anybody's asking for cash or your bank account, even if they're claiming to be your grandma or anything like that, it's too good to be true. In Illinois, we no longer have a cash bail system. So if somebody's asking for cash regarding their grandson or granddaughter being in jail and they need the money to get out, if somebody's asking for cash and they're in Illinois, that's not a thing anymore. Part of the Safety Act, we got rid of cash bail. So if, you know, Ms. Judy or whatever calls and says, I need $5,000 to get out of jail, it's more than likely a scam at this point. So again, just hang up the phone or tell them I'm contacting the police, and a lot of times that scares them, and then they go in, they don't call back anymore.
Don't
So,
anymore.
yeah.
Okay. And I think maybe those have kind of calmed down because everybody's on a computer.
They have,
You know.
they have, but then they just change their avenue, and then they ask for Bitcoins. And again, if they're asking for Bitcoins, nobody is wanting to. That's not a real thing. You know, they're not a real entity. In order, you know, Bitcoin is a real currency, but it's not a real currency when it comes to bank accounts, you know, services, unless it's a person to person and they agree to do Bitcoin. But like Best Buy, all of these electronic companies, Apple, they're not going to ask for Bitcoin. They still want your credit card or cash. So just be mindful of that as well. So
Okay. Any other advice you have for our viewers?
just be vigilant with, you know, if you get that spidey sense, like I said earlier, it doesn't hurt to just hang up and call the police and call the non-emergency number, because we always respond. And if it really is something that is real, then they'll call back, or they'll reach out to you by mail or knock on your door and show that they are who they say they are. But if I would just be vigilant with that, and then go from there. And if it sounds too good to be true, then just call us, and we'll be able to decipher if it's real or not. So.
Okay, thank you. And I think that's great advice for everybody. If you have any inkling of doubt, call the police department. That's what they're there for. They're there to help you. So just give them a call and make sure what you're doing is what you should be doing. And don't, this one woman was very fortunate. She got her money back, but that's usually not the case. So just be very aware that there are people out there trying to get a hold of your money.
Yep, unfortunately.
It really is. Well, thanks for the advice.
No
Thanks for
problem.
coming in today.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thanks for watching us. We'll see you on our next police update.